Today's employers demand work-ready graduates who have knowledge and expertise that align directly with job responsibilities. In Africa, while the youth population is rising exponentially, many graduates are failing to find good jobs. Almost 60% of Africa's population is under the age of 25, with a median age of 19.8 in 2020, according to the UN's demographic projections. The African Development Bank recommends that African countries invest in vocational training across educational institutions and industries. The AFDB also highlights the immediate benefits that more apprenticeships could provide for young people and employers. India is also experiencing a youth bulge phase and boasts the largest youth population in the world, 600 million young people under the age of 25. With 28% of the population being under 14 years of age. This demographic change could be a powerful engine of economic growth and development. If India manages to modernize and expand its education system, raise educational attainment levels and provide skills to its youth, it could gain a significant competitive advantage over swiftly aging countries like China. Professor Malcolm McIver, Provost, Lancaster University, Ghana. Professor Chilitsi Marwala, Vice-Chancellor, University of Johannesburg, UJ. T.V. Mohandas Pai, Chairman, Manipal Global Education Services. Professor Balvinder Shukla, Vice-Chancellor at Amity University. And the moderator is Nayan Patel, Past President of the IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry and Executive Director, Packham Controls Private Limited.
Right, welcome to our moderator Nayan Patel, the past President of the IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry, who joins us now from India.
Thank you. Good afternoon and good evening to my panel members and all the participants at this Indo-African Summit. Friends, knowledge economy is an economy based on production, distribution, and utilization of knowledge and information as a fundamental enabler of growth, wealth creation, and employment. But a knowledge economy cannot be developed without an efficient modern education system. A country's economy becomes more productive as the proportion of educated people grows, it increases. Because educated people are they can more efficiently carry out the tasks that are required for literacy and critical thinking. As you all know, education plays a big role in the economic development of a country. We have just heard in the earlier sessions how technology, education, and the shortcomings have hindered growth in various parts of the world. So the role of the education and skill development in developing countries becomes so crucial that because without that, the country remains poor. One of the major advantages of education, as we all know, it boosts economic growth and increases GDP of the country. Even for an individual, it helps him lessen the challenges he will have to face in his life. However, such educated population has to be employable and they must also get employment. Now here lies the problem. On both these counts, we have problems all over. Education, get them educated, then get them, seek employment for them, and they should be employable. Forums like this will bring such issues on the table, and then the crisscross discussions that we will have may find some solutions to these problems. For that, ladies and gentlemen, we have an excellent panel today. All visionaries, they are experienced, hands-on educationalists, and they all have committed to furthering education systems in their respective countries. As you know, we have with us Professor Malcolm McIver, Provost from Lancaster University, Dr. Marwala, Vice Chancellor, University of Johannesburg, Dr. Balvinder Shukla, Vice Chancellor, Amity University, and our Mohandas Pai, Chairman, Manipal Global Education Services, University, India. Now, we have 30 minutes, 25 minutes or so. So let's, without much ado, let me get straight to the subject that we want to discuss today. And the subject is the knowledge economy, changing demands on skill and education. A very vast subject. But let me start with Dr. Malcolm McIver. Sir, you have brought the prestigious Lancaster University to Ghana from UK into the African continent. What in your views has hindered the quality and mass education in the African continent? And what changes would you suggest the policymakers will have to make to really make it a knowledge-based economy in those countries?
Thank you very much, Nayan. That's quite a question, and I'm afraid my answer might be quite lengthy, so please bear with me. I think if we're looking at what has hindered quality and large-scale education across Africa, it's very easy to say funding is the issue, but that's a very simplistic and very easy point to make, and it needs to be put into some kind of context. I think people don't always realize that tertiary education is capital intensive. Setting up universities, even an individual university, is incredibly expensive. And for many African countries, their priorities lay healthward. And it may well be that their priorities lay in health, or it may have been in primary or secondary education. And understandably so, governments are focused on those areas. So for financial reasons, or maybe even political reasons, it's been difficult for some African countries to meet the demand for tertiary education, to actually make that investment in developing university systems. And to give you some idea of just how far behind Africa is in terms of developing tertiary education, if you look at the United States, for example, there are approximately 5,300 universities in the US, serving a population of over 330 million people. Now, when you compare that to Africa, there are 1,225 universities, serving a population of 1.3 billion people. The US has actually 4 times as many universities, serving a quarter of the population that we have here in Africa. So the first issue, one, is of supply. Now, there is a problem in terms of supply, because the reduction of the low levels of universities, the knock-on effect is that there's a shortage of university places. This in turn leads to higher teacher-student ratios and larger class sizes. Now that in turn also impacts upon quality. So we have the issue of large class sizes, fewer lecturers, fewer university places. When you overlay that with the fact that African universities have traditionally focused on less on pedagogy and more on knowledge acquisition, a very traditional approach to learning, and that their primary purpose was to prepare the middle classes for positions within the civil service, then we see we have a problem. A very narrow type of education delivered to a very narrow section of society. And that now has a knock-on effect in the 21st century. What we have is a shortage of young academics going into tertiary education. I noticed in your intro, the figure of 60% of Africans being under the age of 25 was mentioned. And Africa is a young country, but academia is an old country. If you actually look at academia in Africa, 60% of academics are actually over the age of 45. So we have an aging academic population, and we have very few young academics coming in. So there's a desperate need for more academics. There's a desperate need for PhDs. And I think it was the University of Cambridge who recently said that over the next decade, Africa is going to need at least 1 million new PhD researchers. So that's the context we find ourselves in here in Africa. Your question, though, and that's the important question, is how can we change it? And I think one of the ways in which we can change it is by greater public and private sector collaboration. As I said at the beginning, tertiary education is capital intensive, it's very expensive. And rather than relying on governments to take the sole responsibility for the provision of tertiary education, there needs to be greater participation and collaboration from the private sector. And if I may for a second, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I'm right in saying that in India in 2017, the regulations were relaxed on private institutions. And over the 3 years since then, I believe the number of private universities has increased by 79. So there's been a substantial increase in tertiary institutions in the private sector as a result of relaxing regulations. So that's one area that we could address here in Africa. We could work more with the private sector. We could incentivize private universities to get involved in Africa. And I think we also need to encourage young people to engage with academic careers. We need to ensure that they are adequately rewarded. And we need to increase investment in PhDs and in research activity. If we're talking about regulatory authorities, then one of the things I would say that needs to happen is that regulatory authorities need to move away from being gatekeepers and become facilitators. There is still a tendency, and it's not just here in Africa, but there's still a tendency for regulatory authorities to see themselves as gatekeepers and to prohibit any change from existing practices. And they need to move away from that, and they need to enable institutions to become more innovative. They need to support institutions that move away from the traditional didactic approaches and embrace more education, more student-centered approaches to learning. And of course, they need to be more welcoming of innovative initiatives such as online learning. There is a great need for online learning where you have restricted or limited physical resources. And then finally, what I would say is greater international collaboration. And this ties in very much with the whole notion of the knowledge economy. It's very difficult to develop a knowledge economy if your education institutions are working in isolation from the rest of the world. So very long answer, I'm afraid, but it's not.
Three keywords that I took from your thing. One was private universities or, public-private or partnership in education, where I have two stalwarts from two private Indian universities on our panel today. Second, you talked about whether, what was it? Let me first, I'll come back on that. You talked about international collaboration. Again, here we will talk about that in a few minutes with Dr. Marwala also, Professor and another thing. You talked about online learning.
Yes.
And that we have Dr. Balwinder Shukla, who runs an institution with more than 40,000 students online in Africa. So I'll get her later on the job. But Mr. Pai, we talk about technology, we talk about education, we talk about skill development. And Dr. Malcolm talked about that, skill development is also one aspect of education which is not coming up. In the slides also earlier we saw that. We don't have a system like the German system, that the dual system, the double system that they have where they go into apprenticeship and then go into studies. What in your opinion is the role or the impact of education or skill development in the progress of economy of a country? Because that will set the tone of what we need to do in education in both the countries. You have to unmute yourself, sir. So you're unmute.
There are two factors for economic growth: productivity of capital and productivity of people. Productivity of capital comes by proper investment. Productivity of people comes. The higher the skill of people, the higher is the productivity and higher the income. For example, if you take a German possibly gets maybe 15 times the salary of anybody in China, but is much better productive than any Chinese. So quite possibly it takes 10 Chinese to overtake a German in productivity. So I think skill development education makes people productive, and higher the productivity, better the competitiveness and the economy can grow. Now, what do we have to do in education in India for skill development and for high quality education? First of all, we have to build capacity. We have 975 universities in India. 60% of people go to private universities. We have 36 million young people in college. We graduate 9 million young people every single year. Our gross enrollment rate is only 26.5. That means only 26.5% of people go to college. and it is growing at 3.6% a year. So what is the way out? We are a $3 trillion economy. We could be a $5 trillion economy by 2025 and a $10 trillion economy by 2030. So we are growing quite rapidly in the next 10 years, and we will require enormous amount of skills. The way out is, one, to bring in a lot of technology in our universities. I would like every student to get a laptop or an iPad or a tablet with preloaded software. India has some 5 edtech companies for unicorns, each of whom has got the curriculum, everything digitized to be given to people, which helps improve educational capacity by maybe 25-30%, and helps also bring down the lack of quality teachers in our universities. We have about 1.4 million faculty in our universities across India. It's a huge system. It's a huge country with 1.38 billion people, but we require maybe about 300, 400,000 better qualified, faculty over a period of time, because like the professor said, many of them are about 50 of an earlier generation. So the use of technology. The second, we also need to make sure that we have more labs in our colleges. Many of the colleges don't have skill development and lab work, because today education has become theoretical. Theory has to become practical by application of the theory. And that's why if you have labs, if you have more project work, it will happen. Now, India has a new education policy, which is changing the facets of education to make education more practical, more suited to the economy, and much better in terms of technology assimilation. The curriculum will be upgraded, blah, blah, blah. I think a lot of good things are happening, but the key is the pace at which we need, and that is exactly falling back. I would say in passing, 25% of the education that we get to our students is very, very good. 25% is something that they can be trained after they got a job. Balance 50% is just ordinary education, and it does not meet the requirements of the economy. So the wastage of young talent is enormous. But I think the good thing is more and more people want to get education, etc. And today we need to spend more. We spend possibly 4.5% of GDP, private and public, on university, on education. We need to take it up to 6%. And for that, the big challenge is that many people are not able to pay for private education. So government requires to have a big scholarship program, etc. So I'll end here by just saying, it's a huge, huge animal, the biggest in the world after China. Will overtake China this year in terms of total students. Enormous amount of high quality people are there. Enormous amount of not so good education is also there. The key is to improve quality, for which technology is essential.
Yes, sure. That's the right thing. We need to improve technology. We have to improve our labs.
Now, it is quite important that for us to be able to move forward in Africa, global collaboration is actually very, very important. The largest supplier of postdoctoral fellows in South Africa is actually India. If you look at the composition of our postdoctoral fellows here, obviously Nigeria is another, but India is actually the leading supplier of postdoctoral. So collaboration between researchers in both countries is very, very important. And now, obviously, with the advent of collaboration platforms, technological platforms, you don't necessarily have to be traveling up and down in order to have a meaningful research collaboration. Exchange of students. I personally have supervised many students from India who come and study for their PhD. I think we need to increase that. I think we need to deepen education as a very important aspect of collaboration, whether it is meetings between our Prime Minister and your Prime Minister and our President. Education must actually be at the top. Then, secondly, education is supposed to actually lead to production. One of the things that India has been very, very successful, for example, they have built a very important platform for making medicines, vaccines, for example, now that we're in COVID. How do we bring our collaboration between universities so that some of those learnings that we can get from India can also come? And it's not just about people to people at the academic level, also the investors. If there is a healthy collaboration between systems of innovation in South Africa and systems of innovation in India, then the investments are actually going to come. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean, such collaborations, especially on the research front, will help the economy of both sides, not just economy, but humankind as well. But we were talking about globalization and online learning. So I would like to get Professor Balwinder Shukla here. You know, I have a granddaughter, 6 years old. The pandemic era of online learning, she works on her iPad and says, Dadu, you are too slow. I mean, the young generation has picked up. I think one good takeaway of this pandemic was, or the lockdown was learning. At that same time, globalization came into education. Hitherto, we wanted professors or somebody to come here. Now we can access faculty and talent across the world. What do you think? How do you think this globalization will pan out going further? And how do you see the entire new norm coming in of online learning and college in-campus learning? How do you think it will change the entire education system, Professor Shukla?
Thank you very much, Mr. Nan. We all have experienced the world of work getting flipped upside down without warning in 2020. And it is the year that the pandemic brought the entire world to a complete standstill. At the same time, COVID-19 is likely to be remembered as the first truly global event in human history, which further accelerated the VUCA environment, where remote teaching using the ICT became the new normal. And that's what was the opportunity for the higher education institution, how they can leverage what side on the technology, what Mr. Mohandas Pai was saying, and also the how you build the collaboration with the international organization, with the Professor Malcolm and the Professor Marwanda also have mentioned about the collaboration. So this gave the great opportunity to build the collaborations with the using the ICT. So the whole e-content for all the courses were developed. Remote teaching learning was taking place for all the students, keeping their safety and well-being in mind. The faculty and the students were trained how to use the technology, because our Honorable Chancellor, Dr. Atul Chauhan, invested hugely in the technology. And we have a very strong international collaboration unit where we focus on the internationalization with the universities from across the globe, as well as collaboration with the industry. We were able to, during this pandemic, were able to organize more than 3,000 webinars from the experts from the across the globe, including the Nobel laureate one side, and the industry experts, to build that how we can build the research collaboration between the universities, how we can impart the quality education by the experts, which was otherwise were not possible in the normal circumstances, bringing so many experts from the other countries. But the technology gave that enablement that you were able to bring the expert. I would like to share with we have Amity has a very strong relationship with the Pan-African and the countries way back since 2009. Amity University under the Pan-Africa project of our late Honorable President, Dr. APJ Kalam, when he initiated the Pan-African project, Amity was one of among the 5 universities. We partnered with the 33 universities from the African Union. More than 60 programs we offer, the more than 15,000 students enrolled for the program with Amity University. Even the now new E-Vidya Bharati project, where again we have already the 2,000 students from Africa has enrolled with us, and the more students are already in the pipeline to enrolling. So it's always we believe that how we can collaborate with the international universities and to provide that the latest curriculum as per the industry requirement, because the skill development is very important. How do you impart the skill? Only once the curriculum is aligned with the industry. Secondly, a pedagogy is for the skill development. That means that you, instead of having the lecture mode, how you can have the experiential learning, application-based learning, the project-based learning, having the apprenticeship and the internship with the industry, which gives the students the exposure, doing and learning, rather than just listening. And that's where we have brought so international exposure, the collaboration, the student where we send our student to across the globe to the various countries every year from the MIT. Even during COVID pandemic, where we could not send our students to UK, to USA, to Middle East, to the various countries, Australia and all, but we were able to bring the professors from the international university to teach the complete course to the students in India. I think this is the time where the collaboration should be the main focus to bring the quality, for the students from across the globe. And the partnership and new education policy in India is giving that freedom how the higher education institution can collaborate with the various universities. So I would say that this is a great platform, that Indo-African platform, where we can discuss and we can see that how the Indian universities and African university can work together to give that much needed education to the students for the African countries, and also how the faculty of the African universities and Indian university can work together for the research, maybe the doctoral program, maybe the postdoctoral program, and maybe the funded research projects, joint research, joint publication. Lot many things can be done. So it is the initiative have to be taken from both the sides. So MIT University and many of the Indian universities are very open. Dr. Mohandas Pai's university is very, very proactive university for the international collaborations. I'm sure the many other universities, and I think that African universities can come forward and jointly we can work for developing the future talent for the industry, for enhancing the productivity and the economic development of the countries.
Thank you, Dr. Shukla. In fact, there are a couple of questions that I had on the new education policy, on the foreign collaborations, on online learning, a lot of learning that we have from Mr. Mohandas Pai of his Manipal University, how it was built up and all. But I think paucity of time, we will have to end shortly here. It was exciting. This is a vast subject. I do hope that this initiative of IMC and CNBC Africa will bring those universities, Indian universities and the African universities closer together so that they can now work on common platforms in the new digital world and share experiences, share faculties, share the learning process, the pedagogy, whatever it is, and make sure that we have better educated population on both sides, on the Indian side and the African side. So on behalf of my president, Mr. Rajiv Podar, and all at IMC and CNBC, I would like to thank my panelists for sharing their views. And I do hope that we will have one more session, a little longer session on this subject. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Indeed, very important conversations there with the future of work changing due to COVID-19. Mostly, we do need to change the structure of education to fit the demands that the workplace requires right now and into the future. Thank you very much to Nayan Patel and the panel.